Hi, I'm Karen Curry Parker, and one of the questions that came up is, do twin flames show up in the human design chart? So I want to talk about this a little bit and maybe put some of your understanding about twin flames, relationships, attraction, that love at first sight zing that we have sometimes. I want to not put your questions to rest, but I definitely want to give you a different perspective to think about how it is that we relate and what creates attraction. So, one of the things that's really important to remember is that when we're in our human form, we are filtering our life experience through our human design chart. So, your actual human design chart sort of gives you a filter through which you perceive and see and experience the world. And that filter is going to influence how you relate to others. It's going to influence the kind of work that you choose. It's going to influence the story of who you are in this incarnation and how you live it out. So we're often looking for connection and intimacy, which is a natural, not only human drive, I think, frankly, it's a natural soul drive. When we're not in our bodies, we're actually all from the same energy. We are in unity consciousness. We may have differentiated aspects of ourselves as element of an oversoul, but for the most part, we are all in the same energy together, and we're not necessarily undifferentiated, but we're not better or worse than, or more attracted to or less attracted to. A lot of the dynamics of the attraction, emotional, sexual energy that we experience in our human form isn't present in that non human form. So when we say soulmates or twin flames, in a way, we're all soulmates and twin flames because when we're not living out the story of our human selves, we're in a very different story where we're all aspects of a unified field of consciousness. In the work that I've done over the years, including the work that I did when I worked as a spiritual medium and I was connecting with people who had crossed over and disincarnate archetypes and energies, one of the things that was just so moving and profoundly, I don't even know what the word is, just so profoundly moving was the fact that the quality and the quantity of love that's available to us beyond our human experience is so massive. Literally, our physical bodies in this incarnation as humans can't hold that much love. And sometimes when we come into form, into our current form, and we're carrying out the story of who we are and the legacy of the people who are in our genetic lineage in the story that we're living, sometimes when we come here, part of our journey is to remember that love, and we have to go through forgetting that love as part of that remembering piece. So love is part of who we are. Love is really, I think personally, I think love is what we are. It's a very beautiful, powerful, creative frequency of energy. And ultimately, when we talk about quantum alignment, one of the things that we do when we align ourselves with quantum creativity and we become quantum activists is we relive and remember and fully activate as much love as we can in our human forms in this lifetime. And I think sometimes we stop ourselves short from allowing ourselves to experience the full capacity and possibility of love when we start to limit the definition around things like partner and soulmate and twin flame. And not to say that there aren't attractions, and not to say for sure that there aren't more destined relationships. When you incarnate in your life, remember that that design crystal that carries the story of who you are also carries with it a magnet that attracts into your reality circumstances and situations that match what's necessary for your story to unfold. So there are certainly events and encounters and people in your life who are part of your story, who are there for a more fixed or more destined or fated reason. But to lock ourselves into thinking that love can come in these really interesting and sort of limited forms, I think does a disservice to the expansive quality of love that's available for us here. That being said, we're in these human bodies and they do really cool things and they have really cool feelings and they get attracted to each other. And sometimes the quality of that attraction, this mechanical element of how two people in their unique energy fields can come together and literally be drawn together. There's a mechanics around this, and when the mechanics are working really, really well, and the mechanics are high, when that attractor factor is mechanically, a 10, then we have sometimes juicier, more beautiful encounters with people. That being said, let me just say this, because I think this is also an important piece to understand. You can have really strong mechanics with someone. You can be really, really drawn to someone and even be very vibrationally resonant and harmonious with someone because of the mechanics of how your chart and their chart come together. And it can still be the wrong relationship. You can still be really, really attracted to someone who's married, or really, really attracted to someone who's really dysfunctional. There might be attraction there, and we've all done this probably. Hopefully you haven't, but you might have. You've been really attracted to someone who's really not that good to you. So when we talk about the energy of soulmate and twin flames, sometimes what happens is we have this instant seeing somebody across the room experience, and of course sometimes it's the person you're supposed to be with, and sometimes it's just the mechanics of attraction. So let's talk about this briefly. There are a couple of ways that we get attracted to people in human design. First thing that happens is anytime you have a gate in your chart that's just hanging off here, we call this an electromagnetic, and it literally is a magnet. We're always drawn to the other half of this magnet. The more connections you have with someone, I'll just tell you an example. My husband and I have 11 electromagnetic attractions, meaning I have 11 gates hanging that connect with 11 of his gates. So we have a lot of electromagnetic attraction, and that's true. So the more attraction you have, the more connection, and sometimes even the more attraction and even sexuality can be associated with that energy. But remember, and this is so important to understand, it's just mechanical. You can have a phenomenal quantity of electromagnetics with someone, and they can be married, or they can be, narcissists. So the second thing that sometimes influences us in terms of who we feel really profoundly attracted to is our conditioning. In human design, there are 4 types of conditioning. We call those conditionings openness by center, imprinting, generational energy patterns, and genetics. So these are 4 ways that we get comfortable with specific kinds of energies that maybe we don't have electromagnetics with, but we like these energies. By the way, if you're really interested and curious about this information, you should run human design charts for all your past loves. It's pretty enlightening, and you may even start to uncover an interesting pattern there in terms of what you tend to be most drawn to. So the first thing we have to do before we talk about openness by center is just briefly talk about the nature of definition and openness in the centers. And just a quick reminder, if you do not have your human design chart, please shoot us an email, Karen@joyfulmission.com, and let us know that you don't have your chart so we can get you one. But when you look at your chart, you'll see that on a chart there are 9 geometric shapes, and those shapes are either going to be colored in or white. If you have it colored in, we call it defined. Anything that's defined in your chart is energy that you have consistently. This is your energy, the truth of who you are, and you have this energy all the time. Anything that's white in your chart is energy that you have open. Anything that's open in your chart is where you experience other people's energies. So you take energies in and you amplify other people's energies in your open centers or your white centers. So open centers are receptive. They take energy in, they amplify it. This is where you get to know other people. This is where you have wisdom. And for some of you, if you have a lot of openness, this is where you carry your empathy or your sensitivity. Anything that's colored in, as I said, is defined. Anything that is defined is not only the consistency of who you are, the truth of who you are, it's also the energy that you are radiating out into the world. So we oftentimes are attracted to people who have definition or colored centers where we have openness, and vice versa. Wherever you have openness, you have predictable behavior patterns that sometimes also create what I call mistaken motivations in relationships. So for example, if you look at this chart, you'll see on the bottom right hand side there's a triangle, big triangle called the emotional solar plexus. That's the emotional energy center. If you have the center white, you're going to be empathic. You're going to feel other people's feelings. And so what we see happen here a lot, and half of you will have this open, by the way, is if you have the center open, there is a tendency when you have the center open to have a mistaken motivation of wanting everything to be peaceful and harmonious, and oftentimes at cost to yourself, where you fear handling difficult conversations or conflict or even speaking your truth because you don't want anybody to have an emotional reaction to what you're saying. So sometimes people with an open solar plexus, a white triangle on the right side of the chart, will not speak their truth. They won't ask for what they want, and they'll spend a lot of energy in their life really working hard to keep everybody happy because they don't want to deal with the emotional fallout in that energy center that they have that's open and so very, very empathic and sensitive. The second kind of conditioning comes from imprinting. This is from your family of origin. Your parents' energy type and your parents' centers will create certain behavioral patterns that become part of your imprinting. So if you have a parent, let's say, who is a manifesting generator, and let's say you are a projector, you might be deeply conditioned by that manifesting generator energy, meaning you might think that that's how you should go out in the world because that's how your parents were. But in fact, sometimes you have to unlearn some of the energies that you were imprinted on because they're not correct for you. The third kind of conditioning is what we call generational energy patterns. You actually inherit your human design from your grandparents. And of course, consequently, your children inherit their human design from your parents. So you can see right there, there's sort of a perfect storm for family energy dynamics that are intergenerational. So very easy for families to fall into patterns and for you to be, interestingly enough, oftentimes in your relationships, particularly your relationships that you have when you're younger, in your teens and in your 20s, sometimes you tend to have a pattern where you're very drawn to people who have energies very similar to both of your parents, not just your mom or just your dad, but energies that are similar to your parents because you're trying to clear and finish and resolve intergenerational family challenges. And the only way you can do that is to relive those energies in your personal relationships so that you can clear them and so that you can oftentimes clear your generational energy patterns as well. Number 4, the other thing that conditions us is, like it or not, some of our human adventure traits are genetic. Science actually shows that we have protein codes that on our genes or on our DNA that actually regulate the way in which our DNA functions and controls the expression of our DNA. And those protein codes are actually formed based on genetic lineage and experiences that your parents and your grandparents and even your great-grandparents had before you were even born. So sometimes some of the patterns you're carrying, some of the things even that you're attracted to, are predetermined based on the experiences of your ancestors. If you do not live true to who you are, or you have never been taught how to live true to who you are, you may grow up with what I call unmet energy needs. The 4 main unmet energy needs include the need for power, the need to get revenge, which, by the way, is just a weird way to prove our lovability, a need for attention, or you may feel inadequate and act out of your inadequacy. If you don't learn how to manage these 4 energies properly, you may be attracted to someone who helps you live that drama out, painful as it may be, so that in that process you can learn what you need to learn so that you can become empowered, lovable, valuable, and you can understand how to use your energy properly. When we look at the human design chart and we break it apart into sections, what we see is there are 9 very important and powerful components that need to be in place for you to really attract partnerships that are worthy of you and the value and the beauty and the magnificence and the lovability of who you really are. Those 9 resiliency keys include lovability. You need to feel and know that you are lovable. Empowerment. You need to know how to be powerful and you need to feel powerful. You need to have courage. You need to know how to manage fear in your life and not let fear paralyze you or cause you to make choices that are not actually really good for you. You need to understand your emotions and become emotionally wise. When you understand how emotional energy works, it allows you to work with it, to actually leverage it as part of your creative power instead of being victimized by it or being impulsive or compulsive or shut down because you don't know how it works. You need to know how to trust yourself and your own intuition and know how it is that you know so that you can read all the cues about what's right for you. You need to be authentic and not limit or hold back or be afraid or not feel that it's safe for you to fully express the truth of who you are. You need to value yourself and have self-worth and not tolerate anything in your reality that's less than what you're worthy of. You need to know how to make good decisions, empowered choices that take you in the right place so that you create what you're here to create and be aligned with the destiny that some of you have to fulfill. And most importantly, well, not most importantly, but last but not least, you also have to know how to leverage your energy so that you don't spend a lot of energy in your life that you waste, that ultimately burns you out and doesn't leave you available to being a good partner in a loving, empowering, delicious, juicy, romantic relationship, the kind of relationship that you're worthy of. So before I go, I just want you to remember that you deserve to receive all the love you desire. You are infinitely lovable. That's the nature of who you are. So I hope this answered your question. I hope it gives you a little bit of insight into maybe what's driving you into relationships and helps you understand a little bit the juice of the human experience of attraction. And may you create real intimacy and enjoy being in a human body this weekend.